Entering Apocalypse in Easy Mode. Chapter 21 Getting Out. Hearing Albert's words, the man looked up to look at him. The look in his eyes was a mix of shock and confusion. But he still managed to keep his face to keep looking calm. "Explain to us," the man said. Albert nodded. Outside, there was the sound of zombies rampaging in the background. "Hey, Albert," the adult man sitting next to him said. "Did you see what the zombies turned into?" Albert sat and looked at him. "It's getting worse. They've grown to be 3 meters tall and their blades also become bigger." "Shit," the adult man in the suit muttered with frightened eyes. Albert looked at him with a level gaze. "His power is pretty good. What is the reason for being so afraid? Tell me about your findings earlier," the man with a stern face said demandingly. Albert turned back to him and started explaining what he had seen. Albert started straight to the point, where he noticed that there was a man who looked very young. He could use the skill Burning Hand, which could only be used by spending lots of coins. Albert also explained his great fighting ability. It was as if his whole body had fully adapted to this apocalypse. Or as if he already had higher stats than everyone else at this stage. Hearing that, the stern-faced man frowned. It made his face look even sterner than before. "Turns out, it's possible for him to look more stern." "Are you sure about that?" the man asked. "Leon, I'm sure. I saw it with my own eyes," Albert said. Leon turned his eyes the other way. Then he scratched his chin. Albert knew that was what he usually did when he was thinking. "Maybe we should meet him later," Leon said. "Wiley, how about we head out now? Are you ready?" Leon glanced at the adult man in the suit. His agitated face made him look unprepared. "Should we really be leaving now?" Wiley asked. His reluctant feelings could be seen clearly. "Yes." Leon glanced up at the clock on the wall above Wiley. "It's about time. You heard the info that woman gave us last night, right? The group has also done a night quest. After completing the quest, they got a clue as a reward. The clue said that at 12 o'clock in the afternoon the next day, something called supply cache would appear at a predetermined location. The rewards they got from completing D-rank quests were just that. They don't get coins or EXP from completing the quest. They all think that the reward they receive is pretty shitty. But, Leon said that there was no point in complaining. So they decided to just accept that." Wiley sighed. "I guess it can't be helped. Why do we have to bother to get that reward? Why don't they give it directly to us? Whoever is behind this apocalypse is an asshole," a woman who looked the same age as Wiley said after being silent for a while. "Let's go," she said. "I'll pave the way." As usual. The woman stood up first holding a hammer in her hand. She who had been silent until now had turned into a figure that looked the most prepared among them. Leon grinned. "That's a good spirit, Rosie." Leon also stood up. In the end, all the members of the group got to their feet and prepared to head out into the terrifying sights out there. Leon was holding a machete with a shiny blade. The machete was his own and Leon took good care of it. Behind him, the youngest girl of them closed her eyes. A yellow light appeared around her body. The rest of the group waited for her to finish before starting to move. It was because she had a private attribute that allowed her to see the future. Even though she could only see up to 30 seconds into the future, but in this world's situation, being able to see even for a second was an advantage. Albert stood while holding a short dagger in one hand. Suddenly his body turned transparent, almost invisible. He also got that ability from his private attribute. Leon turned his head towards the young girl. He and the rest of the group waited for her to finish. It wasn't long before the young girl opened her eyes. "How is it, Lola? What did you see?" Leon asked. Lola started to explain what would happen in the next 30 seconds. She could only see the future from her own perspective, but since Lola was at the back, she could see the rest of the group in front of her. Lola gave a short and fast explanation. The other group members had gotten used to it because they already do it since yesterday. So they do their best to pay full attention. With that ability to see into the future, Lola could also tell how many zombies were behind the door including their position. That is a huge advantage for them. "All right. That's enough. We'll break through and head straight for the supply cache location," Leon said. "Everybody ready?" Wiley, Rosie, Albert, and Lola nodded their heads almost simultaneously. After that, they put their gas mask on. Seeing that his group was ready, Leon walked closer to the door and opened it. Their hearts pounded as they saw the door finally slowly open. Instantly, huge blades connected to flesh tentacles extended inward. The tentacles danced wildly trying to find their prey. Rosie, who already knew what she had to do, walked forward and lifted her hammer. Electric sparks appeared in her hammer. Rosie swung her hammer at the door with full force and screamed. Hi-ya! Boom! Jzzzzzzrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrr OM. The zombies who had grown their heads against the ceiling were electrocuted and convulsing. They were unable to move for a few moments. Wiley, Albert, and Leon launched their attacks all at once. Take advantage of the opportunity that has been created by Rosie. Chapter 22, The Given Place. They were originally inside a building. So what awaited behind that door was a corridor, that was now cramped by the presence of zombies that had evolved to be 3 meters tall. But when they become that big, this corridor would restrict their movement. Taking advantage of the situation and what Lola had revealed about what was happening 30 seconds from now, Leon, Albert, Wiley, and Rosie began their consecutive attacks. The humans who were now players made good use of the power of their private attributes. After struggling with hardships before, they were finally able to gain a better understanding of the power of their private attributes. Although they still can't use it perfectly, but at least it's enough to keep them alive. Leon swung his machete with all his might without fear of anything. He was leading at the very front, and Rosie was next to him. The several sharp blades of the zombies that were located at the ends of their flesh tentacles swung at Leon with great force. However, the sharp blades couldn't hurt him in the slightest. The sharp blades seemed to just hit a very strong wall. Meanwhile, Rosie blocked the sharp-bladed tentacles with electricity surging from all over her body. The electricity surrounded Rosie's body like armor and repelled all attacks aimed at her. The tentacles heading towards Rosie were electrocuted and scorched, then fell limply. Because of that, Rosie could attack blindly without paying attention to her surroundings. Because of that defensive power, the two of them became the ones who were at the forefront. Meanwhile, the others stood at the back to launch their attack at the right time. Albert has the power of the private attribute which allows him to turn his body transparent. In that phase, Albert will not be able to get hit. He can also penetrate solid objects with ease. That's what makes him the right person for scouting. After Albert uses his powers, he goes through Rosie's body. Once he was in front of Rosie, Albert turned his body into a solid body again and jumped, then he swung his dagger at the neck of a zombie. Srot. The dagger managed to slash the zombie's neck. But that's not enough to kill it. At the very least, Albert had to separate the zombie's head from its body to kill it. But the zombie was already swinging its huge, blade-ridden arm at Albert. So Albert changed his body to be transparent again so the zombie's hand just passed through him. OM. After the rotten hand passed through Albert's body and hit the wall next to him, Albert made his body solid again and jumped. Then slash his dagger again. Srot. This time he managed to cut the zombie's neck off. Its head, which was rotten and covered with small blades, fell on the floor and Albert gained experience from it. Wiley, who looked hesitant, peeked from behind Leon. He then threw a purplish blob he had created seconds before. When the purple blob hits one of the zombies that it targets, the purple color spreads over the zombie's body rapidly. With the power of his private attribute, Wiley can create some kind of purplish blob. The blob has the power to rot and poison anyone unlucky enough to get touched by it. With that kind of power, Wiley could drastically weaken an enemy. However, he couldn't kill them outright. Because of that, Leon immediately slashed the machete at the zombie who had been hit by Wiley's purple blob. Leon's machete can easily slash the leg of the zombie. After it fell, Leon slashed its neck until its head was severed. Wiley's private attribute also allows him to attack from behind and protect himself against direct attacks. It suited his reluctant-to-fight personality perfectly. Wiley took cover behind along with Lola. The young girl looked even scarier than Wiley. As a man and an elder, it was Wiley's responsibility to protect Lola. Wiley was a coward. But that doesn't mean he's a lowly loser. They proceed to leave the building with the same tactic. This tactic is very effective because some function as tanks and damage dealers. Besides that, Lola, who can see the future for 30 seconds, is also a useful support. Lola uses her powers when the opportunity arises. For example, when there aren't many zombies around. Or when they find a pretty good hiding spot. Unfortunately, Lola's magic power wasn't high enough to overuse it. So they all had to think carefully before ordering Lola to use her powers. The group of 5 managed to get out of the building where they had been hiding before. Outside the building, they encountered a few zombies, but the numbers weren't as bad as they had expected. It's just that their body size is very huge. If we don't get the proper rewards after going through all this, I'll beat up whoever comes to give a quest tonight. Wiley groaned as he continued to run behind. He had already created a purple blob in his hand. His magic power already running low, Wiley could clearly feel it. He was now filled with feelings of uneasiness and fear. Wiley will tend to fuss if he's feeling agitated or scared. The rest of the group ignored him because they didn't have time to deal with Wiley's grunts. After a few minutes, they finally arrived at the given place. The place is a gas station. According to the directions given, the supply cache is in the supermarket next to the gas station. They all breathed a sigh of relief that there were no zombies there. "Don't let your guard down," Leon said. His group members immediately knew what he meant. Even though from here the situation looks safe because there are no zombies. But that is not reasonable for the situation that is happening now. How come there are no zombies when the zombie apocalypse is in progress? Unless something else is waiting for them near that supply cache. They approached the gas station with full vigilance around. Chapter 23 The Guard. They approached slowly with great caution. Their eyes spread around and tried not to let anything out of their sight. Until finally a few moments later the 5 people arrived at the gas station. Absolutely no zombies here. And it's very strange. Where are the zombies actually located right now? Those who had swarmed and competed to eat them were now gone. There are no zombies within a few tens of meters of this location. That can only indicate one thing. That indicated that inside the gas station there were likely bigger, or stronger, zombies. They all came to the same conclusions on the circumstances that occurred here before even saying anything. They prepared to face anything near the supply cache. There is a convenience store near the gas station. Because they couldn't find the supply cache anywhere in the gas station area, they all concluded that the supply cache must be in the convenience store. Leon peeked through the glass door. As soon as he took a peek, he immediately saw what seemed to be the supply cache. It was a black box covered with a silver metal line. The box is approximately 1 meter square. Not too big, but it seems enough to contain whatever reward awaits them inside. "It's there," Leon said in a whisper to his group members. "What else is there?" Wiley asked. "I didn't see anything," Leon replied. "I'll go in first and check things out." They knew what Leon was capable of, so no one tried to stop him. With his ability, Leon was indeed the most appropriate person to enter first. "Be prepared if something happens to me." After saying that, Leon stood up and walked into the convenience store. His jaw tightened because of anxiety. His eyes moved non-stop to scan every inch of the convenience store. But he still found nothing. This is weird. Very weird. Leon stepped closer to the supply cache, but nothing happened. He stretched out his hand to touch the black box. Brake. Suddenly, from above him something fell through the mini-market ceiling. The falling dust blocked his vision so he couldn't see what was falling. Leon only felt something hit his shoulder. Something very hard hit him with tremendous force until Leon fell to his knees. "Erg!" Leon groaned. A moment later the dust and debris cleared so Leon could see what had attacked him. The creature was hulking 2 meters tall. Its head was covered by a white sheet that was almost black with blood. Its body was also wrapped in a white cloth stained with blood. It gripped a giant axe with both hands that had bulging muscles. The blade of the axe was now on Leon's shoulder. Leon finally knew what hit him on the shoulder. If it wasn't for his ability, Leon's shoulder would have been sliced open by now. Then he bled to death. This is the zombie that guarding the supply cache. A purple blob suddenly hit the axe zombie's head, making it let out a groaning that sounds deep and disturbing. Leon used the chance to heave the giant axe on his shoulder and rolled away. After that, he stood up and swung his machete at the creature's back. Crot. Leon's machete can injure it. But he couldn't make the wound too deep because it's hard muscle. The creature, which was some kind of evolution from a zombie, swung its axe toward Leon. Leon was able to duck in time so the axe just destroyed the food shelf behind him. Hi arg. From behind the zombie, Rosie jumped up with her electrified hammer. Buick. JZZZZZZZTTTT. After the hammer hit its head hard, electricity flowed through its head and staggered it. Albert followed shortly after and stabbed his dagger. Craw. The dagger penetrated the white cloth and a bit of skin from the zombie. However, as happened with Leon's machete earlier, the dagger didn't do much damage. Grah! The zombie waved its hand at Albert. But Albert had already used his ability to become transparent, so the zombie's hand just went right through him. Seeing that the blob he threw earlier did no significant damage to the large zombie, Wiley decided to create another one. Behind him, Lola was staring at the store with frightened eyes. After Wiley had created a purple blob in his hand, he threw it at the zombie's head again when he saw an opening. Blart! The blob hit the back of the zombie's head. It groaned in pain again. This time something happened. The dirty white cloth full of blood that covered its head began to decay and finally fell off, revealing an ugly face that was rotting and full of maggots. Fuck! I should have just left it there. Wiley again groaned. However, Leon, Albert, and Rosie seemed unfazed by the ugly sight of the zombie's face. They continued to launch attacks in hopes of dealing enough damage to the zombie. The zombie swung its axe at Rosie. Rosie blocked it with her electrified hammer. Clang! Then Rosie uses her ability to transmit electricity through the axe to the zombie's body. JZZZRRRTTT. Rosie grimaced and gritted her teeth. It indicated that she was squeezing her magic power to transmit the electricity. But Rosie's efforts ended well because soon the zombie convulsed as electricity filled its body. The purple blob was also spreading faster and faster from the zombie's head to its entire body, thus causing it to weaken quickly. Leon and Albert did not waste the opportunity. They immediately charged and swung their machetes and daggers. Craw! 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 Leon and Albert attacked repeatedly with their weapons. The zombie could no longer attack as its body convulsed due to the electricity from Rosie. The two of them also noticed that Rosie's magic power was running low. So they made their attacks as stronger and fast as possible with the remaining time Rosie gave them. Chapter 24 Handling the Guard. As the zombie's strength decreased, its speed increased. Suddenly, it stopped from its convulsing and then began its attack again. The zombie swung its axe as hard as it could. It was trying to cut through Leon's abdomen. But the attack was blocked by Albert with his dagger. The axe head collided with Albert's dagger. With a loud clang, Albert's dagger broke into pieces. Fortunately, he still got one more dagger. A second later the zombie's axe was on Leon's side. It happened so fast that neither Leon nor Albert realized it. The axe was swinging down while Leon was holding his machete in front of him. He couldn't afford to hold anything else while fighting this monster. Finally, the axe struck Leon's machete. Clang! And then the axe was stuck in Leon's machete. Phuuak harg! Leon yelled. CM. The zombie pressed its body against Leon and rammed its giant axe with great speed into Leon's machete. Leon! Rosie screamed. She was watching the situation from afar. She ran to help Leon even though she knew that her magic power was running low. When she felt she was close, Rosie swung her electrified hammer at the back of the zombie's head. Unexpectedly, the zombie immediately turned its head back as it noticed Rosie's arrival. It removed one hand from the axe and swung it at Rosie. Buick! Rosie was sent flying before her hammer could hit the zombie's head. She has thrown over the shelves containing food before finally hitting the wall and coming to a stop. Rosie fell on the floor. She felt excruciating pain in her ribs. Shit! Looks like I broke my rib. Rosie winced in pain. After her magic power ran out, now she had to endure the pain of broken ribs. Plus, it doesn't look like the big zombie will be going down anytime soon. What should we do? Leon and Albert were of course worried about Rosie. However, their circumstances are not much different, so they can't do anything. Leon realized that his machete was broken. There was a part in the blade of the machete that was shattered by the giant zombie's axe. Grah! The zombie roared loudly. Then it ran towards Leon and Albert while raising its giant axe. Leon gritted his teeth seeing the giant zombie approaching. He had not the slightest intention of running because he knew what he was capable of. Instead, Leon darted toward the zombie. Hey, he shouted. The giant axe descended toward his head. Leon threw down his machete and raised both hands to catch the axe blade. Leon knew that the giant zombie's strength had been greatly reduced. And its speed also increased drastically. Because of that, Leon was quite confident he could stop the swing of the giant axe. Erg! He groaned. He managed to catch the axe, but the force behind the swing was still quite large even though it had been much reduced. Attack now! Albert dashed towards the zombie after Leon shouted. The giant zombie tried to lift its axe from Leon's grip but to no avail. Leon moved his hand swiftly towards the giant axe's hilt, preventing the zombie from pulling it again. "I won't let you," says Leon. Albert came and immediately thrust his dagger into the zombie's eye. At least what was left of his eyes. Craw! Albert's dagger pierced the zombie's eye easily. Unlike before, it felt like the giant zombie's body was even more fragile than before. Craw! The giant zombie seemed to be screaming in great pain. Of course, none of the 5 of them empathized with its pain. Instead, they were happy to hear that they managed to inflict pain on the zombie. Rosie, who was still kneeling in the corner of the store, stared at the zombie with a grin on her face. Even though she felt pain, seeing the zombie also feel pain made her relieved. Suddenly Lola came towards her. She seemed to be coming from the glass wall that had already been destroyed behind the store. "You all right?" she asked. "I'm fine." "Erg." Even though she said she was fine, Lola could see that something was wrong with her ribs. "We'd better get away from here," Lola said. Rosie didn't argue because she knew Leon and Albert would be able to handle it on their own. Her presence here could have been a nuisance. So Rosie went outside with Lola's help. Wiley on the other hand had turned to the other side of the store so he could throw his blob on point. Wiley heard the zombie's screams of agony and grinned happily. "A little more," Wiley said in his heart. Wiley created another purple poison blob in his hand. Then threw it toward the giant zombie. Plop! The purple blob hit its back. Decay and poison spread quickly and seeped into its back. Because of the purple blob that Wiley threw, the giant zombie became even weaker. He fell to that knee and the grip on the axe loosened. Knowing this, Leon pulled the axe from the zombie's hand. Leon felt that he could still hold the axe even though it was quite heavy. So Leon immediately grabbed the handle of the axe and was ready to swing it at the zombie. "Go!" Albert, who previously attacked the zombie fiercely, immediately made his body transparent when he heard Leon's scream. "Hi arg!" Leon swung the giant axe at the giant zombie's head with all his might. Chapter 25 The Rewards. The axe swung down from above. The zombie's rotten, maggot-infested eyes widened. If there was even a hint of emotion or awareness in them, it would know that its end was very nearby now. Krayat! Red and grey liquid splattered all over the place as the blade of the giant axe stuck in its head. The giant zombie's hands that had been flailing wildly now fell paralyzed beside its body. Its mouth gaped wide and it let out a groan that accompanied whatever was keeping it alive. Leon released his grip on the giant axe. After he let go, the giant zombie's body fell to the side along with the axe. Clang! A loud thud was heard as the axe's rusty iron handle fell onto the store floor. "NEA." After that, a notification appeared before the eyes of each of them. "Congratulations, you have succeeded in defeating the Guardian, Grade B. Rewards, 500 EXP. The 5 people immediately widened their eyes. They all gained 500 EXP simultaneously. Even though it was Leon who delivered the killing blow to the giant zombie. Wiley cheered with Lola beside him. They were able to cheer like that because they didn't fight directly with the giant zombies. Meanwhile, Leon and Albert slumped on the floor of the store and breathed a long sigh of relief. Rosie, who was next to Lola, was no different. Although she smiled, her smile was weak. Because she had to bear the pain in her ribs. "We can open the box now," Wiley said. He then approached Rosie. "Can you walk?" Wiley asked Rosie. Rosie didn't answer, instead she tried to stand up. But then she fell back with a groan. I guess you can't." Wiley reached out to help Rosie up. Rosie didn't say anything and just put her arm around Wiley's shoulder. Wiley, Rosie, and Lola walked into the store following Albert and Leon, who was already standing in front of the supply cache. "What should we do?" "We just have to touch it," Wiley asked. "I think so," Leon replied. But they couldn't find a handle that might be something to use to open this box. So, Leon then decided to extend his hand towards the box. As soon as he touched it, a clacking sound was heard. The box began to open in 4 different directions. The 5 of them immediately stepped back. But then they immediately approached again after knowing what was in the box. There are 4 different weapons and an orange orb in the box. The weapons were a 50 cm long short sword, a hammer that seemed to give off a bluish glow, a 30 cm long black blow dart, and a pair of daggers with silver blades. Besides that weapon, the orange orb looks different. Is our reward? Wiley asked. Leon and Albert walked closer to the city, while Wiley just stayed where he was and let them check it out. It seems so, Leon said. Leon then lowered his head and extended his hand towards the short sword. When Leon finally grabbed the hilt, he expected something to happen. But nothing happened. So Leon raised the sword. As soon as Leon brought the sword to his face, a window containing the sword's simple description appeared. Name: Black Silence Sword. Upgradable. Type: melee weapon. Grade: B. Leon had a smile tugging at his lips. This is a grade B weapon. Leon exclaimed. What? Albert looked at him, then looked at the sword in his hand with a look of disbelief. Then Albert immediately approached the box to take his weapon. Wiley, Lola, and Rosie also drew closer to the opened box. They scanned every remaining weapon. I think these weapons are adapted to the weapons we use in our fighting style, Albert said. Without thinking any further, Albert took the pair of silver daggers. Name: Double Fang Daggers, upgradable. Type: melee weapon. Grade: B. This is really a grade B weapon, Albert muttered as he studied his new weapon. Wiley, Lola, and Rosie also grabbed weapons that they thought fit them. Rosie of course took the hammer with the bluish glow. That meant only a blow dart and an orb left for Wiley and Lola. Rosie looked at the hammer in her hand and a window appeared. Name: Thunder Eater Hammer. Upgradable. Type: melee weapon. Grade: B. What's this? Wiley was confused as he picked up the blow dart. He had never known that a weapon like this existed before. That's a blow dart, Rosie said. Something the tribes used to shoot poison darts. Oh, that one. Wiley nodded his head. In that case, it does suit me. Name: Fulgrim Blow Dart. Upgradable. Type: ranged weapon. Grade: B. In that case, only the orange orb would be left for Lola. The orb was about 5 centimeters in diameter and fit in Lola's hand. Name: Magic Orb, LV.2, upgradable. Type: magic item, rare. Grade: B. It says Magic Orb. What is this? Lola asked those around her. She scanned the orb, turning it several times but found nothing. Maybe it's something that can grant magic power. Wiley made a suggestion. If that's true, this orb will be very useful, Lola muttered with a smile. After successfully defeating the giant zombies and getting better rewards than they expected, the 5 decided to leave the store and gas station. The sun was higher than they had last remembered. Indicates that the new day enters the time around 10 or 11 in the afternoon. There is still a long day until this day ends. But so far have been pretty good for them. The green poisonous smoke still lingered around. Their gas masks are cracked in several places but still function properly to prevent them from turning into zombies. Should we take the same quest tonight? Wiley asked with a smile after knowing they got such a good reward. No, Leon said. I'm thinking of taking a higher rank quest. I think that's a good idea, Albert said. I think that with grade B weapons, our combat ability will improve a lot. After all, the rewards from quests with higher ranks will be much better. Chapter 26 Next Step. While Leon's group and his party were happy, Clyde's group and the regressors group were feeling anxious about what was coming next. It was almost noon. In their area, the zombies had disappeared and the greenish smoke had also thinned. After they destroyed the zombie spawners, the threat to their area disappeared. But the biggest threat is still not over. They still haven't fought the boss. Therefore, today can be said to still be quite long. They couldn't feel relieved yet. When is the boss showing up yet? Clyde asked because he was getting impatient. The boss will only appear when most of the zombies are gone, or when the time is right, Rodney, the leader of the regressors answered. Clyde mumbled. It was obvious that he had something on his mind now. Everyone present seemed to know what Clyde was thinking after spending some time with him. How about we end this quickly? Clyde finally said his suggestion. I knew you would say that, Sonia responded. Clyde turned to her. He saw the worried look on Sonia's face. Well, if you don't want to do it you don't have to. Clyde gave them a choice. He guessed that now they wouldn't want to venture out to get into any bigger trouble. After all, they have leveled up a lot. And their bodies were also injured. So there's no point in them putting themselves in any more danger. If I'm being honest, I don't want to go out there anymore, Eric said, expressing his heart. He could be said to be the one who carried the most burdens among others. Beside Clyde, of course. Eric was at the forefront and he was the one pushing the zombies away. He is also the one who gets hit by the zombies more than the others. So it was only natural that even with his big body, Eric was the most tired of them. Clyde himself was not too tired after he rested for a few minutes. So he's ready for action again. Clyde just nodded. Then he stood up and picked up the Elder Glass sword. You guys have leveled up quite a lot. So it's time for you to rest without worrying about anything, Clyde said. You're really going to face the zombies again, Clyde? Agatha asked. Yes. But why? So that this can all end as soon as possible. Clyde gave an answer that touched their hearts. Was he as tormented by this apocalypse as they were? So he wants to end this immediately so that everything returns to how it was before? They saw Clyde walking towards the outside of the motel. His broad back was wrapped in a long black robe. He seemed to be the hope for them all. Clyde exited the motel and headed north. This way I can get the title without attracting their attention. As he walked, Clyde grinned. With his current strength, he was confident that he would be able to destroy zombie spawners again. Even if he has to do it by facing hundreds or maybe thousands of zombies that already evolved. Clyde was now level 55. His strength had skyrocketed after he distributed his stat points and skill points. The surge of power flowed within his body. He felt invincible. Of course, Clyde didn't distribute all those stat points and skill points. All of that is limited to level 10. Meanwhile, he still has a lot of points left. Clyde didn't know what to do about it. Was level 10 the limit of stats? But why was he still able to store stats and skill points? Clyde decided to put that aside for now and focus on what was in front of him. He would get a hint about it later from the system that was running this apocalypse. Clyde also knew from the online literature he read that there would be some kind of event that would slap him in the face, and humbled him real quick if he became an arrogant character. So Clyde calmed himself down and focused on remaining vigilant. He couldn't allow himself to get carried away and make mistakes. He's come this far. Then he better finish it properly. Greenish smoke still rising. That means there's still a zombie mess to clean up. So Clyde ran in that direction. His stats that had reached level 10 brought a very significant change to his body. Clyde ran until he saw his surroundings as a blur. But he was still able to easily control his body. It is like a cheat in a video game. He reached this level of strength in just a short amount of time. Clyde put his foot on the roof of a car and stomped hard. So that he can shoot as far as tens of kilometers ahead. Clyde did that a few more times until he finally arrived at the area where the green smoke was still dense. NEA. His toxic resistance skill was already level 10. So Clyde was confident that he would be fine. He stepped into the green smoke. Instantly, the zombies lurking in the green smoke area became aware of his presence. Clyde could hear their disturbing growls and screams. He drew the Elder Glass's sword from its scabbard. Now, where is the zombie spawner? Clyde stepped up and spread his eyes around. But within this thick green smoke, it was too hard to see anything. Gwarg. Suddenly a zombie with a strange shape came toward Clyde. It lunged on all four. Its entire body was covered in spikes that seemed to have come from its enlarged bones and pierced through the flesh. The zombies were the size of trucks and charged with terrifying ferocity. Clyde raised the Elder Glass sword. Dangug. The transparent blade blocked the zombie's head. Even though he was hit by a zombie the size of a truck, Clyde didn't budge at all. Clyde grinned at how light the zombie impact was. He grew more and more confident in his strength. Then Clyde kicked the zombie until it flew away. He put the Elder Glass sword back into its scabbard because he felt that this battle was enough for him to fight with his bare hands. Chapter 27 Against 5 Zombies. It turns out that there isn't just one zombie around. Clyde was quite surprised at how the zombies had evolved. They got bigger. Really big. That's obvious. But other than that, they also changed to have a more terrible shape and look more like monsters. Their faces are distorted by messy overgrown bones. Clyde had no idea how hard it was for them. He hoped that the consciousness or whatever was still left of their humanity had disappeared. He couldn't imagine how much they would have suffered if there was still conscious when the zombie transformation happened. Well, that doesn't matter anymore now. Even though Clyde felt a bit sorry for those people who had turned into zombies, he couldn't do anything but kill them. So Clyde will do it as soon as possible. Clyde saw that there were now 5 5-meter-tall zombies around him. including the zombie he threw earlier. They showed clear signs of hostility to Clyde. Clyde didn't wait for them to come. Instead, he darted towards one of the zombies he thought was closest and threw a kick. Buick. Because Clyde's agility and strength had reached their peak, the zombie didn't even know what happened before its body was thrown back. Gwarg. The other zombies have a fairly fast reaction even though their bodies are very big. One of the zombies whipped a tentacle with a sharp blade at Clyde from the left. Clyde jumped back to dodge. Then he darted forward again to grab hold of the tentacle. Clyde pulled the tentacles with a little more force. Tez. The tentacles snapped off instantly. Its blood had turned into a thick green liquid splashed in all directions. The zombie let out a loud screaming sound that seemed to be a sign that it was feeling pain. Clyde frowned and wondered. Was it a pain that emanated from its human mind, or was it just a natural response to having part of its body ripped? Anyway, Clyde should continue the attack. After ripping off its tentacles, Clyde dashed toward the zombie and stomped his feet to the ground. The move sent his body flying through the air until Clyde was level with the zombie's head. After that Clyde sent a punch to its face. Buick. Crot. Clyde's fist seemed to crush something on the zombie's face. It staggered and tripped over its own feet before finally crashing to the ground. Boom. Clyde landed again. He looked in all directions and saw another 3 zombies charging toward him. The zombie he threw earlier is back with all 4. It also charged toward him. Bring it on. Clyde didn't think about any strategy and just let his barbaric side guide what he would do against the zombies. Clyde let his whole body move. There was an extraordinary cathartic feeling when Clyde saw for himself how his body moved agilely, avoiding every tentacle and claw or even the sharp blade shots fired by the zombies. He fought with a grin on his face. He still had no intention of pulling the elder glass sword out of the scabbard. ********************************************************************************************************************************************************************************************************************************************************************************************************************************* Clyde tilted his head to the side. The sharp blade shot and cut the ends of his hair. After that Clyde shot toward the zombie, who threw a sharp blade at him. In the blink of an eye, Clyde was in front of the zombie. He sends a fist to its face. Buig. The zombie's head was knocked back. Clyde did not stop there. He sent out another fist repeatedly. Buig. 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 After being hit by several blows without stopping, finally, the zombie's body began to disintegrate one by one. The part of its face that was already disfigured was shattered in half. Its chest was hollow and its hands fell to the ground. Even so, the zombie is not dead. It's just incapacitated. Clyde wanted to finish, but suddenly two tentacles snared him from behind. Shit! I let my guard down. Clyde's body was pulled back. After that, a fist covered in sharp blades hit his back. Boog! The zombie who hit him sent out a punch with all its strength. However, with Dark Knight Coat's defense, and his stats at the peak, Clyde didn't feel any significant effect from that blow. He then grabs the two tentacles binding his upper arms and pulls them. The two tentacles immediately snapped off and Clyde fell to the ground. I won't waste any more time. He had played enough with them already. Time to end this and continue searching for the spawner. Clyde darted and hit the leg of one of the zombies that had attacked him. Buig. Craw. The zombie's leg was immediately destroyed because Clyde increased the power of his fist. After the zombie fell, Clyde climbed onto it and stood on its chest. He then stomped on the zombie's head. Crot. The zombie's head was immediately crushed with thick blood splashed in all directions. The zombie didn't move anymore. Clyde then turned to the other zombies. He dashed towards one of the two nearby zombies and then stomped his feet. Clyde launched towards the zombie and gave it a drop kick. Buick. The zombie fell backward. Clyde wanted to finish it immediately, but the other zombies attacked him by swinging their claws at Clyde's head. Clyde could dodge by bending his back. The claw was inches from ripping his nose. Then Clyde got back up and attacked the two zombies. He hit the zombie who had swung its claws at him. The punch crushed the zombie's leg and sent it crashing to the ground. After that, Clyde ran to destroy the zombie's other leg. When they both fell, Clyde crushed their heads with his punches and kicks. Crot. Crot. Clyde manages to kill two more zombies. Now there is one more that he must handle. Clyde rushed to one of the zombies that in standing position and stomped his feet to the ground so he could reach its head. Chapter 28 Huge Flying Zombie. Clyde shot up into the air. Then he swung his fist with the same strength as the one he had used to kill the other 4 zombies. Buick. Crot. The zombie's head was immediately destroyed by Clyde's punch. It fell with a thump on the ground, followed by Clyde, who landed not far from its body. Clyde sighed. He managed to kill those 5 zombies in less than 5 minutes. Maybe even less than that. He didn't feel like he had used up much power even though he had already faced those 5 gigantic-sized zombies. It was proof that his strength had increased tremendously in just a few hours. Clyde walked off laughing. He never would have imagined that he would become this strong 2 days ago. 2 days ago he was still a lonely and cowardly teenager. A teenager who is too cowardly to even end his own meaningless life. But now, he might have become the strongest person, or player, in this world. And that possibility is very likely to come true. Clyde looked back again. He had gotten a notification that he had gotten EXP since killing the first zombie. But because he was already at level 55, Clyde still needed quite a lot of EXP points to be able to advance to the next level. He didn't mind that. Clyde walked on through the green smoke. His vision was limited and Clyde regretted that he didn't seek the skill to be able to see through this dense fog. Kyuk. A strange sound was heard from the sky. Clyde immediately looked up when he heard it. What's that? Clyde looked everywhere but found nothing. Whatever was making that strange sound just now must have been flying through the air. But this thick green smoke prevented Clyde from finding it. He can't be reckless even though he's already at a high level. Clyde always reminded himself of that. So he immediately ran to find a place to hide. At least until he manages to find whatever it is screaming from up there. This all feels weird too. There were no zombies to be seen after the 5 zombies he had defeated earlier. Where are they all? QK. The voice sounded closer. Clyde finally finds a building and runs into it. He kept his eyes up looking for the creature. A few seconds later he saw a black silhouette hovering above him. The creature was hidden behind a thick green fog so that only its silhouette was visible. The creature is huge. Looks like it's about 10 meters long. Its wingspan may be up to 6 meters from one end to the other. That's just a rough approximation of its size. The creature could have been even bigger because it was still floating in the air, so its size wasn't clear. It seems a troublesome monster has appeared. Clyde felt sure that it was another evolution of these zombies. If it could fly, then fighting against it could be very difficult. Unless I can get it to the ground. Clyde ran into the building. Then through the emergency stairs to get to the top of this 20th floor building. Once he had reached the top, Clyde stepped out warily. QK. The creature kept screaming. From up here, the sound became clearer. Clyde crept toward the sound. He finally managed to see the creature's form more clearly. It was a dragon-like creature. But the creature's entire body seemed to be made of pieces of flesh glued together. Clyde could even see human faces with gaping mouths, their expressions looked miserable. The creature has a long beak like a bird. The beak seemed to be made of bone that protruded from inside its body. Its wings are membrane like bat wings but blood red. It has 4 legs and all of them have claws. It has no eyes. It made Clyde wonder how it could navigate through these buildings. Clyde waited for the moment when the creature would turn around and draw closer to the building he was in. It turned out that Clyde didn't have to wait long because the creature was already heading toward him again. It seems that the creature just rotates randomly following the instinct that leads it. Clyde focused his eyes on the creature and used his skill. Inspection, LV.3, is activated. After that, the information about the monster appeared. Monster information. Name, Corpsebringer Dragon. Affiliation, Dragon Monster. Level, 25. Skill, Death Breath, LV.5, Decaying Claw, LV.5. Stats, Strength, 5/10, Stamina, 5/10, Agility, 5/10, Magic Power, 5/10. Weakness, Holy. Affinity, Darkness. Rating, A, C. Clyde grinned. A monster that should have an A rating now only has a C rating. That must have happened because Clyde has private attribute, easy mode, and is already at level 55. So Clyde gets a double advantage. But that monster named Corpsebringer Dragon had a holy weakness. While he does not have a skill with that element. Should I go back and look for a skill with the holy element first before fighting it? The thought had crossed Clyde's head. But that idea vanished as soon as Clyde saw a good opportunity before his eyes. The corpse-bringer dragon flew right in front of him from right to left. It had no idea that Clyde was here. Instantly, his thoughts of being reckless vanished and he decided to attack now. After all, he was already at a high level and had the easy mode attribute. Clyde ran and jumped on the monster's back. QOK. The monster seemed to have realized that something foreign had landed on its back. It contorted its body trying to shake Clyde off its back. Clyde immediately jumped up and gathered his strength. After that, he landed back on the monster's back while slamming his fist. Bug. QOK, E-Alpha. M. Clyde's punch knocked the corpse-bringer dragon off balance due to the strong impact. Clyde then dashed toward the monster's head. He jumped up and clasped his hands together. Then slammed it into the monster's head. Duaig. Whoosh. Corpse-bringer dragon dived down under Clyde's punch. It kept swooping down until it finally fell to the ground with a thunderous sound. Chapter 29 Fighting Corpse-bringer. The sound must have spread in all directions. There were no zombies around the corpse-bringer dragon's location. It was because the creature had absorbed all the zombies in the area. However, a few tens of meters from that area was where Leon's group and the others were resting. After they fought the axe-wielding giant zombie and got their reward, the 5 people decided to rest until nightfall. But a booming sound heard from far away caught their attention. What the hell was that? Wiley asked. I don't know, Leon replied. Albert walked towards the window to look outside. But he couldn't see anything because the thick green fog still enveloped the surroundings. I can't see anything, Albert said. Then we don't have to think about it, Leon said. Looks like whatever it is, it's far away from here. Albert was still looking outside worriedly. Even so, he assumed Leon's words were true. Yeah, you're right. Albert returned to where he had been sitting and fiddled with his new dagger. Have any new monsters appeared? Lola asked in a frightened tone. I think so, Wiley replied. After all, this is an apocalypse. And we are still on the second day. Lola looked even more frightened. She pulled her knees closer and buried her face in them. Rosie came closer to Lola and rubbed her shoulder. After that, she glanced at Wiley with a piercing gaze. Great job, she said. Wiley, who realized what effect his words had on Lola, felt guilty. But I'm just telling the truth, Wiley muttered under his breath. Meanwhile, Leon was staring in the direction he heard the voice just now. It was a very loud sound. From that alone, one could predict that whatever fell was large. Besides that, the sound lasts a bit longer. It was as if the fallen creature had length and continued to move for several meters before finally stopping. Leon swallowed his saliva subconsciously. He was starting to feel scared too. Even though he has the power to become unpenetrable, he still doesn't know what will appear out there anymore. Yet, he couldn't show that fear. Or the group members will be even more scared. Leon gripped his short sword tightly, while hoping that everything will be fine for them in the future. The corpse-bringer dragon's body was indeed dragged a few meters before it finally stopped. It's all because of the force and size of his large body. Moreover, it fell suddenly while flying. Its 4 legs were broken and formed a painful-looking angle. Clyde himself was also thrown from the creature's back when they fell together. Clyde crawled up from under the rubble. He found corpse-bringer still lying in front of him. The monster didn't move. Clyde thought maybe it was dead. But he didn't get any notification saying that he got any EXP points. Well, that could only mean one thing. Clyde walked from the rubble and approached it. He drew the elder glass sword as he knew it was time for action. The corpse-bringer suddenly stirred. QK. It let out its distinctive screaming sound while flapping its wings. The flap of the wings lifted its body. Clyde watched as its front leg, which had been broken earlier, began to twitch. A disturbing rattling sound was heard, then a few seconds later, its 4 legs returned to normal. Clyde could control himself quickly, knowing it was going to happen. Seen from anywhere, the monster looks like the main boss that can't be defeated easily. Clyde immediately ran at full speed toward the corpse-bringer. He kicked the ground and then shot up. Even though he couldn't be defeated easily, corpse-bringer was only a serrated monster to him. So, there was no reason for Clyde to be worried. Corpse-bringer noticed Clyde's movement and immediately swung its front claws. Clyde used the elder glass sword to keep the claws from hitting him. Clang! The reddish-black, rotting-looking claw smashed into the clear blade of the elder glass sword. Clyde was knocked aside by the force behind the swing. But he managed to land well on the rubble-filled asphalt. Corpse Bringer opened its beak. Then a wisp of reddish-black smoke appeared at the back of its throat. Swish! It blew the red-black smoke at Clyde. It must be that skill called Death Breath. Clyde immediately ran as hard as he could to the side to avoid the reddish-black smoke. He managed to avoid that. When Clyde looked back, he saw that the place where he had been standing had turned into a black, reddish slime. Both the asphalt and the rubble covered in slime began to melt and disintegrate within seconds. That's very dangerous. Death Breath was extremely fast and deadly. If Clyde's agility wasn't level 10, he didn't know if he could have avoided the smoke. Corpse Bringer didn't let Clyde remain silent for too long. It flapped its wings and flew again into the air. After that, it dived towards Clyde, about to thrust its beak into him. Seeing that, Clyde ran away. The beak pierced the ground where he had been standing. Clyde then kicked the ground again. He shot onto the Corpse Bringer's back. Burning Hand, LV3, is activated. Swish! Flames shot from Clyde's hands toward the Corpse Bringer. Qak! The creature screamed as if in pain. Some parts of the meat on its back were burned and melted. Clyde landed back on the ground. He wasted no time and immediately took off with the Elder Glass sword in hand. Clyde slashed the Elder Glass sword with all his might at the Corpse Bringer's feet. Crot! The clear bluish blade slashed the Corpse Bringer's left hind leg. It immediately fell because it lost its balance. Then Clyde channeled his magic power into the Elder Glass sword, intending to cause greater damage to the Corpse Bringer. The Elder Glass sword's blade let out a bluish glow in response to Clyde's magic power. Clyde ran fast. In the blink of an eye, he had reached the creature's head and slashed the Elder Glass sword. Chapter 30. How is that possible? Wait, what the hell is that? Inside an empty white room, a man wearing a pure white suit spoke in a shocked tone. His forehead was furrowed deeply until it looked as if his two brows were about to connect. What? A woman with short red hair answered him. The woman was wearing quite revealing clothes. The pants she wearing were short black jeans. And she was wearing a black tank top over a leather jacket. The leather jacket was unable to cover everything, let alone her protruding chest. Her face looks beautiful with bright green eyes. There are a few freckles on her face, but you can't see them until you get closer to look at her. Just look at that. The man in the white suit pointed at the holographic screen floating in front of them. On the screen was a young man fighting a huge winged monster. The monster's entire body seemed to be made of flesh melting into one. The monster's size was enormous. Almost like a small jet plane. Maybe even bigger. But the young man could easily fight it without much trouble. He jumped from the top of the building and then landed on the monster's back. He then ran through its neck and whacked the monster on the head until it fell to the ground. Whoa, that guy is so brave, the red-haired woman looked amazed. Plague! A book flew to her head. The woman winced and stroked her head. What are you doing? The woman shouted. Look at that screen. It's not something that should be happening at this stage, the man in the white suit said while pointing at the screen. His power breaks the balance of this stage. When she thought about it some more, what the man in white had said was true. It's only day 2 and that monster should only appear to terrorize anyone who sees it. No one else should be able to beat that monster. In fact, no one should even go near that monster. But the young man even approached the monster by jumping from the top of the building. And now, he was fighting it with incredible strength for a player on the second day. Ah, you're right. What happened? The woman said while looking at the screen. Did he get a certain artifact scattered around this area? The man in the white suit picked up a thick book with a blue cover. He intended to check out any artifacts that might be in the area. The red-haired woman was waiting for him. They were silent for a few moments. Until finally a sigh from the man in the white suit was heard. There's no artifact that can give him that kind of power at this stage, he said. Then, what exactly happened? The red-haired woman asked. The white suit man looked at her with a serious look. You should go over there and check it out, he said. What? Me? Of course, you have to go. You want to tell your seniors to go there, the man in the white suit said in an annoyed tone. The red-haired woman could only sigh and couldn't say anything else to complain. Then she stood up and walked away from him. The man in the white suit looked her away and nodded approvingly. Then he took his cell phone out of his coat pocket and made a phone call. Clyde channeled his magic power into the Elder Glass sword. The sword glowed blue in response to Clyde's magic power. Corpse Bringer turned its face towards Clyde. It didn't have eyes, but it seemed like it had another way of detecting Clyde's presence. As Clyde swung the Elder-glass sword at its neck, the corpse bringer suddenly used its tail and bound Clyde's body, then swung him towards the wall of a building. Brayok! Corpse bringer slammed Clyde against the building's wall until he broke through the wall and ended up inside the building. But the pain Clyde felt wasn't as bad as he thought when he smashed through the wall. Clyde was able to stand up instantly. When he turned his head, the corpse bringer was flapping its wings to fly. Due to the severed left hind leg, it couldn't use its legs to stand on the ground. I won't let you. Clyde dashed from inside the building. The elder glass sword in his hand flashed furiously in response to Clyde's magic power. When corpse bringer saw Clyde coming out of the building, it immediately spat out death breath like before. Clyde, who saw the black liquid fall on him, immediately ran to the side. The black liquid fell beside him. But the corpse bringer didn't give up. It spewed out black liquid again and again. And repeatedly Clyde can also avoid it. While continuing to dodge, Clyde used his mind to raise his burning hand level. In the hope that he would be able to deal enough damage to the corpse bringer even if it wasn't a holy elemental skill. You upgraded burning hand to level 10. Skill, burning hand has reached max level. After getting a red notification before his eyes, Clyde immediately increased his speed to charge toward the corpse bringer. When he got the proper distance, Clyde kicked the ground and launched himself up towards the corpse bringer that was trying to fly away. Burning hand, LV10, is activated. Zwoosh! Clyde released a very strong burst of fire from his hand. The flames looked no different from the flames that came out when Burning Hand was still level 3. But its power had clearly increased a lot. The flames hit the corpse bringer's rear right leg and burned it much faster than before. The flesh that covered the leg was immediately charred and melted down, leaving the leg bone. QK! Corpse bringer screamed in pain. But Clyde wasn't done yet. He grabbed the corpse bringer's leg bone and then pulled it down with all his might. Corpse bringer fell again. Its attempts to get away from Clyde have failed. Clyde wasted no time and immediately ran toward its head when the monster had fallen. Then he used his will to combine the power of the burning hand with the elder glass sword. A moment later the previously transparent blade was enveloped in flames. Clyde jumped up and stabbed the elder glass sword into the corpse bringer's head. Crot! Zwoosh! Flames spread in the corpse bringer's head. Chapter 31 Red-haired women. The flames instantly spread as the flaming blade of the elder glass sword stabbed into the corpse bringer's head. The flames expanded very quickly. The corpse bringer screamed in an extremely loud, deafening voice. But Clyde stood still and sticks his sword with all his might. He also continued to channel his magic power into the elder glass sword so that the flames would not be extinguished. Zwoosh! After a moment of only burning that head, the flames expanded and spread very quickly throughout the corpse bringer's body. The fire didn't affect Clyde because he was the one who released it. The corpse bringer moved its legs and wings frantically. It was as if he was trying to shake off the pain and heat from the fire that was burning all over it. However, the monster's efforts only ended in vain. After a while, the corpse bringer finally stopped struggling. Its legs and wings fell limply and burned with fire. Clyde didn't stop releasing his magic before a notification about the death of this monster appeared. Even though he had already seen that the monster's body was not moving. Congratulations! You have accomplished the impossible task. You have killed a corpse bringer dragon. You received 2.000 EXP. You leveled up. You leveled up. Title upgraded, Limit Breaker, LV.2. Title effect, grants the power to raise the limit of all stats. As the level of the title increases, the stats limit will also increase. Ha ha. Clyde let out a long breath and then jumped off the corpse bringer's burning body. Clyde turned his head and watched the flames scorch the body of flesh that had joined together in a strange way. Sizzling sounds and the smell of burning flesh filled the air. Clyde was a bit bothered by that, so he walked away. Clyde put the elder glass sword into its scabbard. His body didn't feel exhausted even though he had just fought that giant monster. The effect of his high level and private attributes was great. Clyde was laughing smugly alone in the middle of an empty, rubble-filled street. There's no one or anything here because everyone has become zombies. And those zombies had probably been absorbed into the body of the corpse bringer he had just grilled. Clyde didn't see the zombie spawner here either. It was odd enough, but Clyde didn't think about it any further. Maybe this was intended by the organizers of this apocalypse. You're quite strong for a young man. Clyde hears a woman's voice that suddenly appears and startles him. He hastily drew the elder glass sword from its scabbard and turned to the source of the voice. She saw a beautiful woman with red hair wearing short pants. She was sitting on top of a truck so Clyde could see her long, smooth legs hanging down. But the woman's face looked surprised for some reason. "You okay?" After hearing my real voice, the woman asked with a surprised tone. Clyde frowned. "Should I feel something else when I hear your voice?" Turns out, Clyde was supposed to fall down and feel excruciating pain when he heard the red-haired woman's voice. However, private attribute, easy mode blocked the influence of the woman's voice. Private attribute, easy mode blocks the pressure from the World Master's voice. After seeing the notification appear before his eyes, Clyde frowned. World Master. Clyde glanced at the woman with red hair. She jumped down from the top of the truck and landed in front of him. "I actually wanted to prank you a bit by speaking in my real voice. But you didn't feel anything." That's really disappointing." The woman looked sullen. But Clyde didn't care about her insignificant grunts. "Who are you?" Clyde asked. "ND.NBSP, oh." The woman showed a pretty smile. However, Clyde was not in the mood to think that smile was pretty. Amidst all this, there are only zombies or monsters. A beautiful woman smiling at him could be a monster. And the system stated that she was a world master. Then she could be even more dangerous than a zombie. "Stay away from me." Clyde pointed the elder glass sword at the woman. "You're always this mean with women?" the woman asked. "No. I'm only like this with women who are most likely zombies." The woman snorted in annoyance. "You think I'm a zombie? If you don't want to be called a zombie then tell me who you are," Clyde said. All right. You can call me Agatha." "That's enough for now," replied the woman. "That doesn't explain anything. Tell me what a world master is." Agatha's eyes widened at Clyde's words. "Why you, where did you know about that?" "I just know." "Just tell me about it." Agatha stared at Clyde silently with a dumbfounded expression. How could he know about the World Master as soon as she appeared here? Did he get any information from someone? "You won't say it?" Clyde demanded. "I was about to tell you. But, you also have to say something about how you got that strong. You weren't supposed to get this strong in Chapter 2. Clyde stared at Agatha for a few moments. Then nodded. "I'll say what I need to say," says Clyde. "Okay. Then I'll just say what I need to say," replied Agatha. "I've read many novels where apocalypse like this one happen. So, I already have some preparations on what I should do," Clyde said confidently. As if he really was telling the truth. He wasn't lying, he wouldn't tell the truth. "Oh, I see. That makes sense." Clyde didn't know this woman would actually accept that answer. Is she that stupid? I too have been observing this world for a long time. So I know about the literature that contains about apocalypse events like this. Agatha said. "So that's how you get those powers?" "Yes," Clyde said. "But I can't believe it. Someone must be helping you. Are you one of the people who had the opportunity to sell your soul to the Demon King?" "Demon Kings?" Clyde frowned in surprise. Once again, he received an unexpected surprise. Chapter 32 supposed to be confidential info. After saying that, the red-haired woman named Agatha immediately covered her mouth. Her eyes widened. "Oh shit. I think I've said too much," Agatha muttered to herself. But Clyde, who had already heard about it, would not stop there. "What do you mean, Demon King?" Clyde asked demandingly while looking at Agatha with serious eyes. Can you pretend you didn't hear what I said before?" Agatha said with a grimace on her face. She's kinda idiot even though she was someone who called herself the World Master. Whatever World Masters are, they must be beings with power in this apocalypse. "It's possible that I did make a deal with the Demon King," Clyde said. He decided to play a trick on this woman so he could gain information. "Is that true? However, I'm not too sure. Under these circumstances shouldn't I take any means to survive? So, I take whatever anyone offers so I can survive. Even though I don't know who it is," Clyde said. Agatha seemed to think. According to Clyde, there would be no use even if she thought hard. With her brain capacity, maybe Agatha won't get anything in the end. "I'll tell you a little about the Demon Kings. Enough to let you know whether you made a deal with them or not," says Agatha. Clyde nodded. Then he lowered the elder glass sword in front of Agatha's face. But he did not put the sword in the scabbard. Demon kings are one of the three groups of celestials. They will offer you the power of hell, the realm of darkness. The power you will get will usually not be far from the attribute of darkness, or the most common is fire. Agatha explained. Why do I assume you made a deal with the Demon King? Because you cast a fire elemental skill. So because of that. Though, this is a skill I bought at the vending machine, thought Clyde. So you did make a deal with one of the Demon Kings. I don't remember, said Clyde flatly. Agatha stared at Clyde with her eyes and mouth wide open. She seemed dumbfounded at what had just come out as a response from Clyde. Hey! You're playing with me, aren't you? You're making me give you information that should be confidential, and giving me such bullshit answers. Agatha stamped her foot on the asphalt. The stomp of her feet shattered the asphalt she stepped on, making Clyde surprised at the strength of that woman with a slim body in front of him. I didn't trick you. Didn't I say from the beginning that I wasn't sure of all this? Clyde asked back with a straight face. Agatha just sighed. Then she slapped her forehead for lamenting her stupidity. Well, I don't think there's any other way. Suddenly Agatha shot toward Clyde with incredible speed. Clang! Luckily Clyde managed to raise the elder glass sword in time to block Agatha's fist. You can even block my attack without being pushed. Agatha then spun around and kicked Clyde with one leg. But Clyde was still able to block the kick with his hand. Clyde groaned as he felt the powerful force behind Agatha's attacks. He had guessed that she was indeed stronger than him with the title of World Master she had. Judging from the name alone, it's clear that Clyde as an ordinary player in this apocalypse game won't be able to match her even with all of his stats already at the maximum level. Agatha then jumped back. She looked at Clyde while tilting her head. She looked at Clyde as if he was a creature that caught her interest. You're interesting. Actually, what are your stats numbers? You can't tell. Clyde asked back. Agatha stared at Clyde for a few moments. Then Clyde's character information window appeared in Agatha's view. She seemed surprised after knowing Clyde's stats. Not only do you have stats at level 10, you also have a title. And I can't see your private attribute, Agatha said. She can't see that. Clyde thought this could work to his advantage. You still won't tell me who gave you that power. Okay, I'll be honest with you, Clyde said. I don't know who, or what has given me power. And I'm also honest that I use some knowledge from novels I've read about situations like this. Then, in a situation like right now, what should you do so I don't kill you? Clyde paused to think. Should I use that here? He recalled something in a novel where the protagonist experienced something similar to the current him. Not exactly the same, but similar. Perhaps you want to make a deal with me instead? Clyde asked. Shit, I'm not sure if this is going to work or not. I must find a way to escape from here immediately if this fails. A deal, hey? Agatha said. Let me ask my senior first. When Agatha gave a sign that she was going to leave, Clyde immediately called her. Wait. You'll come to me later. Agatha turned her head. Yes, of course. If my seniors agree, we might be able to make a good deal. You should consider it properly. You can see how strong I am, right? Clyde said. Agatha smiled at Clyde. Then turned her body. She walked in a very interesting way. Her short pants made Clyde unable to take his eyes off her nice ass. A moment later Agatha had disappeared behind a thick green fog. So she still has a superior. Very interesting. Clyde then continued. As it turned out, his way of offering a deal was quite successful. It meant that those world masters, Agatha and her superiors, must need something. Clyde may have involved himself in a scheme carried out by the powerful beings in this apocalypse. Regardless, Clyde thought of using them to his advantage. He also got some valuable information from the carelessness of Agatha, who couldn't keep her mouth shut. She said there were 3 groups of celestials. Whoever they are, they must be big players in this apocalypse. Chapter 33 may be a good thing. Lucho, the man wearing the white suit, just finished his phone call. Of course, those world masters also had a communication mode like smartphones. Although the smartphones they have are certainly not the same as smartphones that are sold in stores in the human world. A long sigh escaped from Lucho's mouth. He just got an annoying request and shout of anger from one of the Demon Kings. The Demon King is asking for something out of the ordinary from him, that is access to see the selection process by himself. Which of course Lucho refused. But considering his position as a Demon King, no matter how annoying he was, Lucho couldn't possibly refuse him so harshly. All Lucho could do was plead politely, give understanding to him as best as he could, and come up with plausible reasons for the Demon King to stop bothering him. Lucho still remembered the words the Demon King had said before he hung up. Those words are more accurately described as swear words directed toward him. "You useless piece of shit. Can't you make a deal with me or something? I've been in trouble so many times because I didn't find a good candidate." Another sigh escaped from Lucho's mouth. If he wasn't a Demon King, Lucho would have cursed him back with even more vicious words. But he couldn't do that. So Lucho could only exhale. And slumped back in his soft chair. It was then that Agatha suddenly entered the White Room and surprised Lucho. "Senior. I have good news." Agatha shouted as she drew closer. She walked by skipping, making her pair of breasts bounce quite clearly. But Lucho was not interested in the sight. To him, Agatha was just a stupid woman who happened to be paired with him in this world. "What?" Lucho asked in a lazy tone. Whatever news Agatha brings, and what she conveys with such excitement is usually quite different from reality. So Lucho had given up hope. "I found someone who is confirmed to pass the selection with grade A, senior," said Agatha with a happy face. Lucho just stared at her with a lazy pair of eyes like before. "What are you talking about? How did you find him only in the second chapter?" Lucho replied. Agatha sat in her chair. "Yes. I know it's unlikely. But, I actually found him." Lucho already knew who Agatha meant. Because earlier he told her to meet someone. The young man did look quite strong. But getting grade A at the end of the selection isn't something that can only be done with sheer strength. After all, this is only the second chapter. That young men are strong, but there's still a lot that can go wrong in the next 4 days. This wasn't the first time a strong person had appeared in the selection stage. And many of them eventually fail or go down to the lower grade when the selection is over. But, maybe he could hear what Agatha wanted to say. She had already met the man, so she must have brought something with her about how could that young man can be that strong. "Okay," Lucio said. "What did you find?" "That man's name is Clyde Cross. He's 18 years old." "Hey!" Lucio snapped. "I don't need that kind of information. Say something important enough for me to hear." Oh, sorry," Agatha let out a regretful smile and then continued. "He already has the title, Limit Breaker, LV.2. It was an amazing achievement in the second chapter." Lucho began to be interested in the man. If indeed he has a title that has reached level 2, which is the hardest title to get, his level and stats must be very high already. Then how did he get it? Lucho asked. He is said that he gained knowledge from frequently reading novels with this kind of storyline. But I'm not sure, maybe he made an agreement with a Demon King, Agatha said. That's possible. We can't see whether a player has made an agreement with them or not, Lucho said. But, he can survive by reading novels might be true. What? Agatha frowned. Can't believe what her senior just said. That's right. You wouldn't understand because you've never read a book. Novelists these days have extraordinary imaginations. They already suspect that something like this will happen sometime in the future. R.NBSP. Lucho explained that with a bit of visible excitement. As if he seemed familiar with what he just talked about. But Agatha just shook her head as if she wanted to get rid of the conversation earlier. And said the important points. That young man also offered us to make a deal, Agatha said. I expected him to say that when you said he often read novels about something like this, Lucho said. All right. Let's take a look at his progress first. After that, we can come over to him again. Agatha let out a smirk. Senior, you also think what I think, right? What are you thinking in your dumb mind? We can use it to increase our rank. Agatha said excitedly. Lucho just snorted, he didn't say anything and continued to watch the screen. This time the scene on the screen moves to another area and displays many humans who are still shrouded in fear. Crouching helplessly at various checkpoints scattered throughout the city. Clyde continued on his way. He encounters several zombies along the way. But that wasn't a problem for Clyde. He had a hard time seeing the sun because of this thick green fog. But Clyde estimated that it was already noon. Clyde just realized that he could still feel hungry even though his stats were already at the max level. Should I go back? Clyde didn't see anything else here. So maybe he'll come back now and wait for the night. Maybe he could take a night quest with a higher reward later. Or maybe he should wait for Agatha to come back. Chapter 34 Sooner than expected. At the motel, Rodney was sitting alone in his room. He looked into the mirror where he could see his own reflection. Those grey eyes seemed to be telling him that he should stop wasting time and proceed to make the next plan. Now he is at a very high level. His current level completely exceeded all the regressions he had experienced, even many times over. With all his knowledge of what was going to happen, coupled with this high level and stats, Rodney was confident that he would be able to pass this selection and advance to the next. But one person worries Rodney. That person is Clyde. A young man who he didn't know how could be so strong. He was the one who allowed Rodney and the other regressors to reach this chapter so easily. It was also thanks to him that they could reach this high level in just 2 days. But because of that great power, Rodney was worried that he might mess up his plans. Rodney sighed as he looked at himself in the mirror. Should I get rid of him now before he gets stronger, or can I use him to make my way easier later? If Rodney could get him to work together, then his path forward would be significantly easier. However, Clyde doesn't seem like a fool. So maybe Rodney should also think of a way to get rid of him if Clyde notices something strange and starts to wonder. But that won't happen if Rodney can play it safe and smart. After all, there were 2 girls he could take advantage of if Clyde threatened his plans. Rodney grinned. This time he must succeed. Rodney was tired of going through everything over and over again only to die by an imitation creature on the 5th day. He would start feeding Clyde information to get the young man to do what he wanted. After that, he would get rid of him and qualify as the candidate with the highest grade. Rodney saw his reflection in the mirror and smirked. A sly grin that no one, even the regressors, had ever seen before. A moment later, as if he had come to his senses, Rodney returned to his usual facial expression. No, I can't look like this in front of all of them. Clyde finally came out of the place where there was still a lot of that thick green fog. He had wanted to explore further, but he suddenly felt hungry. Clyde wouldn't know what happened when he got hungry in this apocalypse, so he didn't want to take too many risks. Last night they ate some leftover food at the motel where all the guests and their owners had left, coupled with the food they get from the shop around. By now the food should still be left. Clyde felt quite at ease. He thought nothing bad would happen once he was at a high level and had a useful title. With his current power, Clyde was able to handle the monsters that appeared easily. Even earlier he had killed a huge monster that seemed impossible to kill. The people in his party were also at high levels, so they won't hinder him too much. However, he still didn't know what the day of the 3rd chapter tomorrow would have in store. While it was still a day light, perhaps they could use this time to prepare. With the presence of the 4 regressors, everything becomes easier. Clyde even felt that this was all too easy. His life feels better after the apocalypse happened than when everything was still running normally. Clyde snorted at the irony of this. How the destruction of this world could be something good for him was beyond his expectations. Clyde arrives back at the motel. He stretched out his hand to grab the door handle. But before his hand could grasp the door handle, a tremor happened as the sound of alarm echoed through the air. The sound of the alarm is like the sound when an earthquake or tsunami is coming. Clyde knew this was a clear sign of alarm signaling disaster. The people in the motel rushed out with their weapons in hand. They saw Clyde standing outside and looking up. What's going on? Agatha asked in a panicked voice. She spread her eyes around but still couldn't find anything out of the ordinary. This is the sound that comes when the boss in the 2nd chapter spawned, Rodney answered. This is too soon. How come this happened already? Clyde had one guess. Maybe the appearance of the boss was triggered because the progress that had occurred was much faster than it should have been. Maybe it happened because we destroyed one zombie spawner and leveled up quickly, Sonia said. Maybe our progress is considered enough for the boss to appear. But in our previous regression, no one was able to destroy the zombie spawner or reach this kind of level. Even so, the boss still appeared when the time came, Mona said. That's because the time is up. So like it or not, the boss has to appear to finish this 2nd chapter, Sonia said. It doesn't matter now, Clyde said. The boss has appeared. We just have to kill it. They are all silent. What Clyde said was true. No matter the reason why the boss appeared so early, in the end, it still appeared and had to be killed. Before the boss killed them. But before that, is there any food inside? Clyde asked. Clyde's question left them dumbfounded. What more is he saying by asking that with a straight face? The sound of the alarm blaring through the air seemed less important than his hunger. There's still plenty of food inside, Agatha said. Clyde just nodded and went inside without saying anything. Chapter 35 Time to face the boss. Clyde came in and got some bread. The earthquake grew bigger and the sound of the alarm outside sounded more and more terrifying as time went on. Even so, Clyde ate calmly but quickly. He will not waste time just eating. But he also wouldn't panic too much knowing how strong he was. About a minute later Clyde came out drinking a Coke. After that, he threw the can once he emptied it. Okay, Clyde said. What should we do? The boss in the first chapter is a pretty intelligent creature. It is also very strong and can control the zombies around it. I've also seen it have a pet which is a very large flying monster, Rodney explained. Don't worry. I've taken care of the flying monster, Clyde said in a calm tone. As if it's no big deal. What? Even so to others, his words were something hard to believe. Don't worry about that flying monster. Just tell us what we have to do to kill the boss faster, Clyde said. Rodney stared at him with a stiff face. He's already managed to defeat the corpse-bringer dragon. But given his strength, it's not completely impossible. Eric took over the explanation. I guess we should wait until the boss weakens. What do you mean? Clyde asked. In time, that boss and all the zombies will start to weaken when the sun goes down. After that, we can kill it. So we have to wait until the sun goes down? Sonia asked. Eric nodded. Yes. That's still a long time. The boss might have found us before sunset, said Sonia, looking troubled. We don't have to do that, Clyde said. Have you guys forgotten that you guys are much stronger than before? Hearing Clyde's words, the group blinked their eyes. Their facial expressions said as if they had just realized something important. Geez, I forgot. We're already level 30. Mona said with a happy face. Reed and Eric also showed their relieved faces. They both even smiled. Only Rodney looks like he was thinking about something and looked restless. He had realized that from the start. And now Rodney was occupied by another thought. Agatha noticed the look on Rodney's face that looked strange. But Agatha did not think too much about it. She thinks it's not worth mentioning. Let's go, Clyde said, looking at them all. Clyde was planning to let them take care of the boss. Because he was already strong enough. After all, now he also got a title which was at level 2. He would let them achieve this victory so that their chances of survival in the next stage also increased. Clyde told himself, he only did that because he didn't want to be troubled by what happened in the future. And so they can help him. Rodney showed them the way to the place where the boss would appear. Just as they were walking, the window that announced the appearance of the boss appeared. Clyde wondered why it had to take this long. Did they want to create a terror effect by letting the earthquake and alarm last longer? Chapter 1, Undead Viruses. Progress, mysterious zombies have appeared in an empty building. Objective, the mysterious zombies is a boss. Kill the zombies to complete Chapter 1. Don't forget to use your stat points to upgrade your stats to max, said Clyde. They all do it. Clyde had seen their character information earlier. Unlike him, even if they upgraded their stats to full, their stats wouldn't reach level 10. The limit of their stats was mostly less than level 10. So even if they had upgraded their stats to full, they wouldn't be able to become as strong as Clyde. But there is one thing that makes Clyde a bit confused. Why does the text on the notification say mysterious zombies? Hey, how many boss do we have to fight actually? Out of curiosity, Clyde decided to ask the regressors. We'll only fight one. But it's very troublesome. At least before, Reed replied. Are you sure? Yeah. Why? Seeing the look on Clyde's face, Reed and the others who saw the look on his face became confused too. Clyde, did you notice something? Agatha asked. I'm the one who's surprised that you guys didn't notice. Did you see that notification that popped up earlier? We might be facing more than one boss. They all rushed to check the notification they received earlier. They could reopen the notification window just by thinking about it. Everything has been recorded in any system that runs this apocalypse. You're right, Agatha muttered in a trembling voice. Shit, my bow isn't even properly fixed yet, Sonia said in a worried tone. What are you doing with your bow? Can you use it to fight? Clyde asked. I tied it with duct tape and added my magic power to the it. It turns out that with magic power, this duct tape could be more binding than it should be. Even so, I feel unsure. Sonia showed Clyde her broken bow. There is a black tape that unites the two arc fractures. It looks pretty good and solid. But as Sonia had said, Clyde couldn't be so sure about the bow either. If you're not sure, you better hide later, Clyde said. Sonia just nodded her head. They walked for several minutes. Until finally they could see a very tall building. They could immediately tell that the building was where the boss lived. Because there was a dark red aura that filled the surroundings of the building. Around the building, there are so many hordes of zombies. They just stood still like statues. Yet anyone could see that the zombies, numbering in the hundreds, or even thousands, were waiting for orders to move. Okay, now what? Clyde asked in an even tone. I didn't see this before. Eric looked confused. Why are they just standing still? From the other side, another group of survivors who arrived earlier were observing Clyde's group. They are here too, Albert said. Chapter 36 Plate Armored Zombie. Albert returns from his scouting. As soon as he returned to his group, Albert said everything he saw. There are 7 people. Wiley asked. And one of them is the strong man you said that time. Albert nodded yet. And I don't think his companions are weak either. They were all silent and lost in their thoughts. You do know that we will probably face more than one boss, right? Leon said. His group mates nodded. There might have been 2 boss created since there were 2 groups in this area. They pondered on what Leon had said. Then Rosie said what was on her mind. That may be true. But, we have no clear way of knowing for sure. They know that this apocalypse is run by something that is very powerful. For whatever reason, they don't know. Whatever consideration they put into making future developments was far beyond their expectations. How about we wait until they fight the boss? Once the boss looks weak, we can kill it, Wiley said. They all stare at him. Wiley's face, which did look like a cunning person, now became clear. Doesn't that mean we're going to take advantage of their predicament? Lola said in a doubtful tone. Her facial expression looks uncomfortable. What are you saying, Lola? Wiley looked at Lola. We would indeed take advantage of their predicament. That's how we live in this messed up world. Lola wanted to say something. But then she had another thought. What Wiley said had some truth to it. Was she willing to maintain the old way of life in a world that was already like this? That seems impossible. I agree, Rosie said. If they are as strong as Albert says they are, then they should be able to take care of those 2 bosses. I agree too, Leon said. Sure, Albert said. I almost suggested that too before Wiley said so. Wiley grinned. I'm glad no one wants to act like a hero in this group. After they reached the agreement, they waited in a hidden place. Albert was once again in the role of the man who carried out the furthest reconnaissance. On Clyde's group side, they were still checking the place to confirm the threat they would face. I haven't seen the boss yet, Mona said. The notification says that the boss is in the building, Reed said. Fuck, does that mean we have to deal with the thousands of zombies lining up before we can meet the boss? Mona gritted her teeth uneasily. There are thousands of zombies as silent as statues. They know that the zombies would immediately attack them as soon as they stepped a little closer. What should we do? Agatha asked. She brought her hands together in front of her chest and bit her lip. Clyde, who looked at her, felt sorry for the girl. She looks so fragile. Agatha's strength is completely unsuitable for her to be able to fight alone. If Clyde hadn't helped her on the bus that time, Agatha would have been torn to death somewhere. You don't have to join the fight, Clyde said. Agatha looked up at him. But, that means I can't do anything to help. Your powers really can't be used to fight. That's a fact. But that doesn't mean you can't do anything to help, Clyde said. You are a healer. So, heal the wounded. After hearing Clyde's words, a faint smile appeared on her lips. Thanks. I owe you a lot, Agatha said. This was the second time Clyde had heard someone's sincere thanks. There was a warm feeling in his chest that he found difficult to describe because it was something he experienced very rarely. Clyde is currently thinking, maybe having a companion in this apocalypse isn't too bad either. But soon he quickly shook off that thought. Because he still can't trust someone easily. You have to remember that I saved you because you have the power of a healer, Clyde said. Hearing those words, Agatha did not feel offended. I know. I'll try to be a good healer for you and the others. Clyde did not reply to Agatha's words. He just stared at Agatha with a look that was difficult to understand. Boom! An explosion suddenly sounded from the building. Following that, loud and disturbing roars were heard. They all stared at the building. Both Clyde's group and Leon's group could finally see the figure of the boss they had to kill. The boss had a body similar to that of a human. However, its body size is probably 5 times the height of an ordinary human. The strange thing is, the zombie boss has quite different characteristics and looks very dangerous. It wears black plate armor that covers its chest, upper arms, and thighs. The zombie was also holding an ugly shield that was round like pieces of steel glued together. And in its other hand, the zombie was holding a cleave sword that was more than 2 meters long. The zombies who were clearly the boss on this stage looked much more dangerous than the Black Ant Kings that Clyde was fighting at that time. Is the boss you fought back then like that too? Agatha asked with a trembling voice. She was unable to take her eyes off the zombie even though her eyes were shaking with fear. No. We shouldn't meet zombies like this. What the fuck is this? Reed said with a scared face that was almost the same as Agatha. In fact, everyone in the group stared with fear and terror evident in their eyes. Clyde wasn't as calm as before either. The boss they had to kill seemed can't be hurt with the strength of this group alone. At this rate, I also have to join the fight. Chapter 37 Starting the Fight. The thunderous sound seemed to shake the heavens. The windows in the nearby buildings were broken and scattered all over the street, adding to the horror of the scene in front of them. What's the plan? Rodney asked as he turned to Clyde. After him, the others turned to Clyde to wait for his answer. Clyde, who was stared at like that, breathed out. Why are you asking me? I also have no plans for this. Aren't you the regressors? Clyde said. That's true. But we haven't faced a boss like this before, Reed answered with a worried look on his face. Let's hide for now, Clyde said. They all then hid behind a building. Once they were a little more hidden in the shadows of the building, Clyde asked. Don't you guys have anything we can use against that boss? The regressors were silent. Their eyes moved as if they were searching for something in the memories from their past lives. But it took them a long time to search for that memory. Clyde, Agatha, and Sonia have lost hope. And in the end, what they had guessed was indeed what happened. They couldn't find anything useful. We didn't find anything. We just waited until the sun set for the boss to weaken. Then we just killed it, Rodney said. Clyde clicked his tongue. That's out of the discussion. We can't wait until the sun goes down. A feeling of anxiety enveloped the group until they finally sank into a suffocating silence. However, the silence was shattered by the sound of thousands of zombies that had started to move. Grah! The voices of the zombies that were the size of ordinary humans, who had only been silent like statues, began to let out screams. They seemed to have just started the parade. From the sound of their roars and footsteps, the zombies started to move in search of their targets. There was no longer time to hide. What now? What should we do? Agatha, who was already panicking, was now even more frightened when she heard the voices of the zombies. Even though our levels are already high, and we've also used up all our points to raise stats to the max, I don't know if we'll be able to overcome them, Reed said. No use guessing, Clyde drew his sword. We just have to fight to survive. Clyde then walked out from the shadow of the building. They all stare at him. Their faces were filled with worry. Even if Clyde displayed such bravery, it didn't mean that they would all feel the same. But, they knew what Clyde said was true. Let's go. Rodney said. He stepped to catch up with Clyde. Eric and Reed followed with tense faces. Sonia and Mona agree that they must protect Agatha, who cannot fight. How's your bow? Mona asked Sonia. Sonia sighed. I'll try not to get killed too soon. Besides, Agatha is right next to me. I don't have to worry about getting hurt, right? Sonia chuckled. She did that not because she felt no fear. Instead, she was too scared and nervous. Because of that, she let out that laugh to overcome her fear. But both of them seemed to find it a brave move. It made Mona and Agatha feel better after seeing Sonia's smile. Let's do our best, Mona said. With Clyde in front, they finally approached the zombies. Clyde himself felt quite anxious. But he convinced himself that he was equipped enough to feel confident. He was level 57 now and he had title, Limit Breaker, LV.2. Besides that, he also has one more important thing, private attribute, Easy Mode. Clyde swung the Elder Glass sword with moderate force. The transparent blade of the sword cut through the zombies as easily as cutting through the air. Craw! 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 Clyde didn't even feel any pressure when he slashed his sword. He can slash 3 or even 5 zombies in one swing. That way, Clyde can penetrate the sea of zombies quickly. Behind him, Rodney, Eric, and Reed could also easily penetrate the sea of zombies. They were already level 30 and all of their stats were also maxed. So they also don't face significant problems when facing these zombies. Clyde kills a lot of zombies because he is walking in front. Rodney, Eric, and Reed also took care of the rest. Meanwhile, Mona is also fighting well. She slashed her katana with a swift movement so as not to let the zombies get closer to Isksa. Sonia is also no less strong than them. Even though she uses a bow, because her stats is maxed like the others, Sonia can shoot her bow like a machine gun. See what? See what? See what? Sonia shoots arrows with incredible speed and precision. Her arrows can hit the zombies' foreheads and penetrate the back of their heads. Isksa on the other hand still hasn't seen an opportunity for her to be able to use her powers. But Isksa was not disappointed because it meant that none of her friends were injured. Asterisk. Clyde let out flames that spread around him with incredible intensities. The fire immediately scorched the zombies to ashes. Clyde's flame bursts could be that powerful because his burning hand skill had reached level 10. Gruoa! The boss gave a thunderous shout once more. Its eyes suddenly lit up red when it saw Clyde and his group. Clyde, who was busy killing zombies, caught that look. They both stared at each other for a few moments. The boss suddenly ran at high speed despite its huge size. Then it directly threw the nearly 2-meter-long cleave sword toward Clyde. Whoong! 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 It was so big that the cleave sword made a sound as it spun through the air and cut through the wind. The cleave sword flies at high speed toward Clyde. If he didn't do something, that huge sword would split his body in two with a single slash. So Clyde jumped and stepped on a zombie's head randomly and approached the cleave sword. Then he swung the Elder Glass sword with all his might. Chapter 38 Another Boss. Clyde swung his sword as hard as he could. And of course, he also channeled his magic power into the Elder Glass sword because he didn't want to take risks in something that could take his life. The transparent bluish blade flashed as it reacted with Clyde's magic power. Then, the blade met the cleave sword that the boss threw. Clang! Asterisk swoosh. Asterisk. The shockwave spread in all directions and prompted the nearby zombies to duck or even fall. The 4 regressors, Isksa and Sonia, also felt the shockwave, so they also ducked and were pushed. Isksa even fell. But Sonia immediately pulled her back to her feet before she got trampled. What happened? Isksa asked because earlier she had not seen what Clyde was doing. It's Clyde, Sonia said. He stopped the huge sword the boss threw at us. After Sonia explained, Isksa understood everything. She nodded, then looked at Clyde. Clyde swung the boss's cleave sword in a random direction. Then he lands back on the ground. As it turned out, the boss was quite strong. Not strong enough to make Clyde feel the danger. But Clyde felt great pressure from the attack earlier even though his stats were maxed out. Apparently, those world masters leveling up the apocalypse. Clyde had the thought that Agatha, the woman who claimed to be the world master, knew his strength and decided that they had to raise the level of difficulty. Then, is my easy mode still in effect? Clyde questioned it. Easy mode was something that allowed him to survive and reach this level of power when he was still in the early stages. But if it was true that the difficulty level had been increased by the World Master, wouldn't that mean that there was no easy mode for him anymore? Groa! The boss screamed again. It seems that it was annoyed because Clyde had already thrown its sword. So the boss charged towards Clyde with steps that were not only wide, but also fast. Dum! 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 As the boss ran, its giant legs hit the ground and created tremors. It also stepped on the zombies that were lined up in front of it and crushed them into pulp. Clyde stood up and prepared to greet the boss with the Elder Glass sword in hand. In an instant, the boss was already in front of him. It swung its arm that was clad in a black iron gauntlet. Clang! Clyde blocked the boss's arm with the elder glass sword. Then he stomped on the ground and jumped into the air. Burning Hand, LV10, is activated. Clyde's hands began to burn with fire. As soon as he was level with the boss's face, Clyde threw the fireball in his hand. Whoosh! The fireball exploded in the boss's face, making it let out a scream of pain while clawing its face. Clyde landed back on the ground. His eyes glanced at the part of the leg below the boss's knee that was not covered by the black iron armor. Clyde lunged forward with all his might. Then activated Burning Hand and channeled it to the elder glass sword. Swoosh! The blade of the sword was burning with fire. Clyde swung it with all his might towards the part of the boss's leg that was not covered by the armor. Crot! After the elder glass sword pierced through its leg, flames spread and burned it. Grah! The boss once again let out a roar of pain. The fire that previously burned the face had been extinguished and left a badly burned face. Part of the boss's facial skin had been burnt until all that was left was bone. The rest of its face leaves burnt flesh. Even the boss's eyes were about to pop out because the flesh supporting them had melted. Hat! Clyde grinned. The boss seemed to notice Clyde's disdainful grin, because it immediately swung its hand toward Clyde. Whoosh! Clyde lowered his head so that the boss's hands only brushed the top of his head. After that, Clyde tried to slash his elder glass sword again at the boss's feet. However, before Clyde could land an attack, something grabbed his leg from below. Then threw Clyde aside with great force until he flew away, hitting the zombies. Clyde's body shot like a bullet that had just been fired from a gun. He broke through the wall of a house and finally ended up inside. Luckily, Clyde tightened his grip just fine, so that elder glass is still in his hands. Clyde got up and shrugged all the rubble that covered his body. Damn it! What was that? Clyde cursed while grinding his teeth. Something grabbed his leg from the ground. And before Clyde knew what it was, he was thrown deep into this house. Once again, he was saved because his stats were maxed out. He came out of the house. But now hundreds of zombies have surrounded him and don't allow him to take a step further. Clyde looked up at the back of the zombie army. Now there are 2 giant zombies there. So that's what pulled me out of the ground. I didn't know they were smart enough to make such a plan. Grah! The zombies lunged at him like hungry predators. Clyde knew that he couldn't be here too long, or the 2 bosses could act freely and kill everyone in the group. Get the fuck out of my way! Clyde shouted, then lunged toward the wave of zombies. Burning Hand, LV.10, is activated. Asterisk swoosh. Asterisk. Flames gushed over the zombies. Clyde spread his flames over a large area. Try to scorch as many zombies as possible. On top of that, he also swung the elder glass sword with his other hand. Splitting a zombie's body is like cutting bread with a butchered knife. With all the arsenal he has, Clyde can easily wipe out the line of zombies. On the other hand, Albert came back after he felt he had something interesting to report. You won't believe this. 2 boss have appeared. And the strength of the players there is stronger than we thought. Chapter 39. This is different. Albert comes back to his group with shocking news. In addition, the look on his face also made them all worried. Albert said that another boss just appeared from the ground. So there really are 2 bosses. Leon muttered while keeping himself calm. Then, about that other group, what can you see about them? Rosie asked. They are all very strong. Perhaps they are at a much higher level than us, Albert replied. How high? Wiley replied with his question. Albert thought for a while, then after a while, he answered. Maybe 10, or even 20 levels above us. Albert's answer made them all feel shocked. The same question is in the head of each of them. What made the group so strong in such a short amount of time? Asterisk swoosh. Asterisk. An enormous wave of flames suddenly appeared. The fire was so high that they could see it rising from the shadows of the building they were hiding in. Shit, was that an attack from the boss, or one of those group members? Wiley asked with trembling eyes, staring at the pillar of fire that stretched up into the sky. All of the group members expressed the same shock. I believe that it came from one of the members of the group. He is the strongest among them, Albert said. I just saw him dispel an enormous sword. He managed to repel the 2-meter-long sword that the boss threw at him. By himself. Leon, Rosie, Lola, Albert, and Wiley thought they were strong enough after getting weapons from supply cache. They are only trapped in an illusion. On the other side were people with powers they couldn't even imagine. And they were now facing two bosses simultaneously. That adds another reason for us not getting into the fight, Leon said. Wiley nodded quickly. Let's stay here first. I don't know for how long, Leon continued. Maybe we should let them kill all the boss. They had wanted to steal the boss killing from the group. They waited until the group injured the bosses and came up with a powerful attack. That way, they would claim that group's boss kill. And get EXP to level up quickly. However, after hearing an explanation from Albert, they agreed to cancel that intention. The two bosses were obviously very strong. They weren't sure they could kill them even though they were already badly injured. Even if they managed to steal the boss from the group, they would bear the wrath of the group. The power difference that Albert had explained made them reluctant to seek trouble with them. So now we only have one goal, hey, Wiley said. We're just going to have to get through this by doing nothing. Rosie looked at him. Yes. I think that's the best choice. A deafening scream sounded again. They didn't know which boss it was from because right now, according to Albert's explanation, there had already been two bosses that had appeared. Clyde is trying to make his way through a sea of hundreds of zombies to get to where his group is. But even though Clyde had killed hundreds of zombies, hundreds of other zombies spawned and replaced their place. How should I end this wave of zombies? There must be some kind of spawner around here. Clyde cast his eyes around in search of the spawner who was spewing out this endless wave of zombies. However, Clyde did not find the spawner anywhere. Meanwhile, his group mates were fighting those two gigantic boss. Shit. Clyde's anxiety is growing. Meanwhile, on the other hand, Clyde's concern is not without reason. The fist of one of the boss moved towards the group. Fortunately, Eric swiftly managed to use his skill. A golden light shield appeared in front of the group. Dang. The boss's fist hit the light shield. But because of its power, Eric was slightly pushed back. Fortunately, his stats were maxed out. Otherwise, he would have been smashed to a pulp by that punch. The fact that the fist was still strong enough to push him away proved something. This boss was still stronger than those who already had maxed out stats. I'll go. Rodney, taking the initiative when he saw an opportunity, jumped from behind Eric and sent a sword slash. Swish air. The dark slash flew towards the boss. But even though Rodney had raised the skill to its maximum level, the sword slash only pushed the boss backward without hurting it. The plate armor that looked like it was made of black steel had holes due to Rodney's skill. But no significant effect was created on the boss. Seeing what was before their eyes, the four regressors felt hopeless. This has never happened on the turns before this, Mona muttered. Chapter 40 Blind Rage. Ha 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 ha. Agatha laughed loudly in the room. In front of her, there is currently a very interesting scene in her eyes. The scene is being displayed on the floating monitor screen. The players in that scene are currently struggling. Their faces were in shock realizing what was in front of their eyes. Look at their faces, senior. Agatha said while pointing at the screen with her long fingers. There is a dark red color like blood on her nails. Lucho on the other hand kept his face straight. He remained calm while staring at everything that was happening before his eyes. Because there is no reason to be too excited. Will you be quiet? Lucho said. He was starting to feel irritated by Agatha's annoying shout and laughter. Didn't you see that? They thought they were already strong because they leveled up fast. But when we gave them a tough enemy, they were immediately shocked. Lucio gritted his teeth. Don't you know what price we have to pay to be able to raise the difficulty of this chapter? Lucho asked Agatha. Agatha's laughter stopped when she heard the question. She had indeed never heard of the price they need to pay before this chapter. She only knew that they need to raise the difficulty because the players are somehow become too strong for this stage. Agatha only felt the excitement when she saw the players who thought they were strong enough to pass this chapter leisurely feel the suffer. After she saw how happy they were after getting a lot of level UPS and was quite confident about what would happen in front of them. However, Agatha was so wrapped up in her happiness that she forgot to ask about what they would have to pay to raise the level of difficulty for this chapter. She just trusting everything on Lucho's decision. Because Agatha didn't want to bother with all those troublesome things. So she chose to completely trust Lucho. So, what did we use to pay? Agatha asked with a feeling of anxiety that was starting to grow in her heart. You think for yourself. What is the most valuable currency for us? Lucho said. Don't tell me. Our tokens. Lucho shrugged his shoulder. What else? All of Agatha's happiness that she had just now suddenly vanished. As if it never happened and she never laughed that hard. Agatha put her hands on her head. Her face was deathly pale and her eyes widened. In her eyes, there was the despair she had seen in the players on the screen. Shit, Agatha muttered. How much do we pay, senior? You pay 4,000 tokens, Lucho replied in an even tone. Hearing that, Agatha's brow furrowed. She realized there was something wrong with Lucho's words. Me? What do you mean I pay 4,000? How about you, she asked. I only paid 1,000. The answer from Lucho made Agatha feel like she was struck by lightning. What the fuck? How can you do that to me, senior? Agatha snapped. She stood up from her chair and stared at Lucho with eyes that seemed to light up, burning with rage. But Lucho didn't look worried. He just kept staring at the screen where the players were fighting two bosses that making things difficult for them. While Agatha was next to him and stared at him with such obvious rage. Of course, you have to pay more. I'm your senior, remember? Lucho said. Agatha was already at the limit of her patience. She unleashed her magic power. Her body was enveloped in a dark purple aura that was rotating like a tornado. Then a scythe with a hilt longer than her body appeared in her hand. Agatha swung the scythe at Lucho without a second thought. D. She screamed. Asterisk krrrrrrr. Asterisk. Suddenly, a metallic rustle was heard. Chains emerged from the greenish vortex behind Agatha's body and ensnare her hands. Instantly stopped her swing. Lucho stared at Agatha with piercing cold eyes. You dare attack me? Lucio's voice was low. He didn't scream like Agatha. However, his voice felt so cold to Agatha that it chilled her spine. Her rage was extinguished as fast as fire doused with water. Lucho stood up from his chair. He stretched out his hand in a pushing motion towards Agatha. Instantly, Agatha's body was pushed back and pressed against the white wall. Her scythe fell on the floor and made a loud sound. After that Lucho formed a gripping motion. About a dozen vortexes appeared around Agatha. Chains shot out of the vortexes and tied her body to the wall very tightly. Arg! Groaned Agatha. Feel the bonds of the chains getting tighter. Lucho approached Agatha who was tied to the wall while putting his hands in her pockets. You are an idiot, Lucho said, still in a calm tone. I know you're angry and you're attacking me on impulse. Now think again about your actions while you're tied up here. Since this is the first incident, I will forgive you. But not the second time. Then Lucho walked towards the door and disappeared. Shit, muttered Agatha. That bastard stole my token. Agatha's anger was still soaring. She knew that Lucho was much stronger than her. But her mind could no longer think straight because of anger. Now Agatha's body is tightly bound to the wall with very strong chains. Not only that, these chains are getting tighter every few seconds. Buak! A fist from the boss shot towards Rodney. He was thrown several meters before finally stopping after crashing into an abandoned bus. Rodney felt a pain in his chest. It was only natural since he was hit in the chest by such a big monster. This is so bad. Why is there such a powerful boss in the second chapter? Rodney tried to get up after being thrown. But as soon as he woke up, hundreds of zombies barely ran toward him. Damn it! Should I go get that now?